Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing Kinds of Kindness, the latest film by Yorgos Lanthimos, starring Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons and Willem Dafoe in lead roles with a bunch of other supporting players. As a fan of both the director's last two films, really loved Poor Things and really enjoyed The Favourite as well. He's a very indie director who thrives with experimental storytelling. I had been made aware that Kinds of Kindness was not like Poor Things or The Favourite and was much more similar to his earlier work and his earlier filmmaking style, so I was really intrigued to dive into that and experience that kind of tone. Kinds of Kindness is an anthology film. It's three separate self-contained stories with the same actors recurring in each one of those stories, interlinked only thematically and only through the notion of one character who seems to persist through all three in terms of the titles of each film. But all three of the films sort of subtly linked to ideas of control and bodily discipline, control over oneself and imposing control on other people, manifesting in different ways in different stories. And ultimately it boils down to this: I hated it. I absolutely despised it. I don't mind a film being ambiguous, open-ended, open to interpretation, unclear, abstract, experimental, but I definitely have a limit when it comes to experimental cinema, I think. Seeing a very independent experimental film drag on for 2 hours and 50 minutes is definitely a stretch of my attention span. I personally loathed mostly everything about Kinds of Kindness. At the cinema where I work, there were a lot of walkouts for this film, and I 100% can see why. I think it definitely didn't help that for me, out of the three self-contained stories, the first one was the most interesting, which meant that when I was less invested in the two that came after it, my interest just gradually waned and waned until I was begging for it to be over. For me, the saving grace is ultimately the cast, and for me, it's Jesse Plemons who steals the show in this. He really anchors the film in the three different roles that he appears in. He's at first a very manipulated individual, kind of learning to grapple with his own autonomy and his own subservience. In the second film, he is kind of grappling with an identity crisis and how well he knows his partner after suspecting she's been replaced. And in the third film, he's this accomplice to Emma Stone's character who is on the hunt for something. Jesse Plemons really has to do the most in this film, dramatically and in terms of sheer acting abilities, and he never falls short of the challenge presented to him. Emma Stone is on fine form. I think at this point she's just Yorgos Lanthimos' muse. I wouldn't say she charts any groundbreaking territory in this film like she did with Poor Things, and maybe it released too soon after Poor Things to really allow her performance that room to breathe. Her and Willem Dafoe, I'd say, are both on fine form. They just get outshone by Jesse Plemons in this. But the film is reluctant ultimately to give you anything more. It drip feeds ideas about the world you're in, about the motives of its characters, about the missions they're on, but it really doesn't give you enough to keep your interest hooked. I wouldn't say any of the films build to a resolution that made me feel satisfied. I wouldn't say any of the films built to a resolution that left me thinking. I wouldn't say any of the films particularly built at an organic pace that really had me wanting to see what happened. I think what kills this film dead is the pacing. All of the self-contained stories are too long for what they ultimately amount to. I think to make a film that long and be that elusive with it, and that unwilling to delve deeper into your characters and ideas within it, I think the first film would have made a fantastic and interesting feature-length movie in and of itself. I think the anthology format, while it is a welcome break to the tedium of the pacing, it ultimately just makes you think, why are we seeing this story unfold when the first one was so much more interesting to watch? I think it will really depend on your relationship with Yorgos Lanthimos and his body of work. I know a lot of people were going in thinking it would be something similar to Poor Things, something different to what you're used to at a cinematic level, but still mainstream enough to get along with it, and it's definitely not that at all. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for it. It had some interesting ideas, but to me there was just nothing compelling about those ideas coming forward. Visually, I can't say I was particularly enthralled either, especially after the kaleidoscopic visuals and vibrancy of Poor Things and The Favourite. I think the only visual staying in my head is the shot of Emma Stone dancing at the end of the third film, and Margaret Qualley diving headfirst into an empty swimming pool and cracking her head open. Those are the only two visuals that stick with me for being kind of darkly comic. And there were some darkly comic moments in there that were actually quite well timed, but not enough to keep you interested. So if you have seen Kinds of Kindness, guys, I'd love to know your take. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Please also consider liking and subscribing to the channel. That's always a huge help for me. And in the meantime, we'll see you for the next review.